What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about Players Cup 3, kind of how I feel about what's good, what's bad, what are the best decks going in, what are the objectively best decks going in, and how are we going to approach it. So Players Cup 3, while we're here, go here. Players Cup 3 is coming up in 10 days, March 20th. March 19th, the decks will lock. So we've got tournaments pretty much every day happening in the standard format. And for most people, the format has gotten relatively stale, myself included. Um, the decks are pretty much repeating themselves over time. ADP Zacian, blah blah blah. We're seeing some weird decks here and there do well, but for the most part, the format has relatively mellowed out. You can see the metagame reports if you go to play.limitless. So that's where I'd start if I was you, to find a list to work with, honestly. But I'm going to talk about dynodata.app and kind of how some decks are trending. Dynodata is a site that my friend Brad has worked on extensively. I've been lucky enough to kind of talk to him about some things. Um, yeah, we can kind of clear this real quick. And we can look at archetypes one by one. So the biggest thing I want to talk about is trend moving forward, because trend means that one deck usually falls behind the trend and is forgotten about, either for good reason or it's going to come back in roaring popularity. So we'll sort by popularity in general. Eternatus has been spiking since, for a while, honestly. Um, let's switch our tournament filter to from minimum for tournament range also to 310. All right, let's apply this for all 100-person tournaments. And let's clear this real quick. Okay, so we'll start with the archetypes. No, not Pikarom, please. Eternatus. Eternatus has been going up in relative popularity. It started off like not that high in percentage, but now we're seeing, I think I saw a free tournament the other week that had literally like 5 Eternatus in their top 8. It's hovering around 20% of the meta share. Very comfortably 20 to like 15 to 20% of the meta share has been Eternatus at almost every event, which is pretty big if you think about it. Um, so I think Eternatus is on the trend. It's trending upwards. There's a lot of different variants. There's the power plant variant. There's the stage 1 variant. There's the poison variant. I think the poison variant is the least expected and also the worst one. I prefer the power plant variant above all else because you get to win games purely off cheese, and you know off the bat in an open deck list metagame whether or not your opponent plays a counter to you, to your stadium, your game plan, blah blah blah. So as a player who doesn't play a counter to a power plant, you might have to play differently, play a little bit worse than you normally would, use the denes in spots you normally wouldn't. The other build is like, I don't know, like the 4 Evital, more baby build, kind of built to deal with like Decidueye and stuff like that. I think Eternatus is by far and away the best deck moving into the second phase because of how powerful it is on turn 2, especially with if you get the attachment turn 1, regardless of what you do. So that's Eternatus in a nutshell. Pikarom has been dipping in popularity. What happened around here to make Pikarom go from 20% of the meta share to less than 10%? Rusted Sword got released. Now, Rusted Sword doesn't immediately make Pikarom bad, but Zacian can now one-shot Pikarom without the aid of ADPGX. Raichu and Raichu gets one-shot. Pikarom gets one-shot. Basically, it makes it so you can't bench any of your cards that you want to bench against ADP, and that's not good. So ADP basically can run over you with that card. Luke Metal can also play it if they want to kind of do damage to you. And straight Zacian has become a deck as well. And I, in personal experience, since I've made the last Clay Zacian video, I have been kind of running through Pikaroms every time I hit them on ladder. So I think Pikarom is still a tier like 1.5 deck, but I wouldn't expect to see it in the same numbers we've been seeing it throughout the format. Scorch. Now, Scorch has been played by like a certain group over and over again. It's been below 10%, not more than like 20% at any given point. But Alex Szymanski did pilot Senta Scorch to the highest rep in the world, so that is something to be noted. His list is on his Twitter. I would be very cautious about Sense Scorch. I don't think we'd see a lot of it, but I think it'll be like third, maybe fourth most played deck in the grand scheme of things. Now, Zacian ADP. The deck has not been wildly popular, but given a best of 3 format where you want consistency, you want a deck that can just win as quickly as possible, you want a deck that wins, Zacian ADP is your deck. I think Zacian ADP and Eternus will be the 2 most played decks by far, especially with Rusted Sword being reintroduced into the format. Or not reintroduced, but introduced into the format. Yeah, I think the deck is really good. It's really scary. Yeah, that's what I have for it. Blacephalon is another one I want to talk about because it always like bounces up and down. It has not seen much play honestly recently. I don't know the reason why. Maybe just inconsistencies. Maybe people don't want to play it. But if you're playing a best of 3 format and you want to brick one game out of the 3, or like your logic is the deck may brick one of the 3 games, why not just play Blacephalon, which has much higher win percentage when you set up than when you brick. So I doubt we'll see a lot of Blacephalon, but I think it's a strong pick for the event. I will not be playing it, however. Luke Metal's another deck I want to talk about. It's been rising in popularity. Not too popular, obviously. 12.5, 12.8% is not crazy, but it has gotten a lot of new tools like Rusted Sword, allowing it to have a chance against some matchups. I don't think your matchup against Sense Scorch is any better. I think that matchup still sucks. I think Eternus is an auto win. I think Pikarom is a really good matchup. I think Zacian ADP is unfavored now. Because if it wasn't unfavored already, it's unfavored now because of Rusted Sword. So that's really unfortunate for you as a Zacian Luke Metal player. So I think the deck is not poised to take down the tournament, which in turn makes Sense Scorch have one less good matchup. So Sense Scorch's viability goes down a little bit as well. Other than that, all these other decks are kind of fringe decks. I don't really have anything to talk about here. So we'll move to the next thing that I want to talk about, meta breakdown, especially. So we can see across, let's filter like I wanted to. I don't know why the filters reset as I came in. March 10th, apply. Over 51 tournaments, we can see Eternatus has been the highest placing deck, Pikarom the second. I expect Pikarom to kind of dwindle in that popularity. Sense Scorch is placed a lot, but I think that also is on the back of good matchups like Zacian Luke Metal and Zacian ADP not having Sword. So yeah. And like I said, remember, Blacephalon was not played a lot, but look at its placements. It's still placed 70 times in top 16 or better, which is pretty insane. Mad Party, I think, can be seen. I think it's one of my considerations as well, so I'm not going to lie to you. Colossal, Decidueye. Decidueye is a deck that can run through anything if there's no text. So in a format like this, where you can kind of roll through the meta, potentially, knowing with open decklist if your opponent has a tech for you or not, could be a very good pick. Colossal loses one of its best matchups in Pikarom, but also has a good matchup in Eternatus. So if Eternatus keeps one of its best going, then yeah, you beat that. So yeah, very interesting stuff here. And then we have tech cards, especially. So with Eternatus, let's filter once again, because I think my filters all reset when I literally restarted the video. Very unfortunate for me. For Eternatus, we can see a lot of these tech cards. A lot of these cards are staple. Zigzagoons, Hiding Darkness is found in most decks. Seems like a popular tech. Yveltal, I think, is one of the best techs to put in these decks. Capture Energy, I'm not sold on. Spiritomb seems good. Hoopa good. Crushing Hammer, I'm not a huge fan of in this deck, but we'll see play, obviously. The poisons, then it's all the poison cards, then Power Plant, Techs are shown here and there. We can see Pikarom techs. Pikarom is very consistent and tight across the board, so you can't really do much with it. It's like the Yell Grunt versus E-Switch, Tag Switch debate. What tools you play, Vikavolt, no Vikavolt. But I think the deck takes a huge beating from what's going on right now. Set to Scorch, the important text to note are Great Catcher, Reshizard versus Heatran, Giratina and Fion, and the type null Silvally build that Pedro popularized. Other than that, everything else is pretty standard in my opinion. These techs are kind of to be obsoleted. Zacian ADP, obviously, Scrapper and stuff like that are not going to be relevant. Vitality Band obviously is not relevant because now Rusted Sword makes its way into the format. This would be much higher if we looked at a much smaller sample size of recent data, but that also is a much smaller sample size, so we can't base things off it. I prefer playing Swell. Big Charm is definitely a card you can play. I don't know if it's necessary, especially with Rusted Sword in the format now. Maybe it is because of Rusted Sword. Maybe it is because that Skyla is very interesting actually as a tech card here. And same with Leon. I think Leon is a very, very interesting tech card, giving you the 320 to one-shot Ascent to Scorch VMAX. Yeah, so very interesting there. Blacephalon, I don't know much about, to be honest. That's out of my comfort zone. But you guys can see the text here. Kind of go from there. Luke Metal, it's like consistency versus non-consistency. Or Stefan popularizes tag call build, which seems very interesting. Galarian Stunfisk versus not. Recent Stamp versus not. Gear versus not. Gear versus Hammers usually. That's kind of where we're at on this. So what does this mean for everything? What does this mean in terms of decks and where I stand? So let's go to Play.Limitless so I can pull up like some sprites. Easier for me to look at. Not this. Completed. Heggy. Metagame. So Eternatus is probably my top far and away pick because it's consistent. It has a good high roll in a best of 3. Even if you brick one, the deck still is incredibly powerful. I think it's also going to be the most seen deck. So figuring out how to do mirror is going to be very important, especially with hammers. I think Zacian Luke Metal is not a very strong deck into this meta, but you do have auto wins and auto losses, especially if you expect Eternatus. You can kind of just ride it to the top. Zacian ADP I think is the second best deck. It's not a deck that I would like to be playing because it's very boring. I personally don't want to be playing it, but I acknowledge how good it is. Senti Scorch is really, really strong, but it's also not my cup of tea, so I won't be playing it. I think it's going to be your third most seen deck. And then we have Pikarom, which I think is another deck that's like very strong, but it's gotten very weak comparatively to its former self due to Rusted Sword and some other things. So I don't think Pikarom is the play. I would stay away from it if possible. Blacephalon seems very interesting. It's one of the decks that I want to practice with a little more these next 10 days. Give myself some time to actually get acclimated with the deck. I've never actually given it a fair chance, but it seems like the high roll potential is very high. Straight Zacian is a deck that I've been playing with a lot. Clay Zacian, Straight Zacian. And I really, 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 really like Zacian. Obviously, Senti Scorch is not a great matchup. But everything else seems really, really fine, honestly. Baby Blonde's probably not great. Mad Party probably not great. Everything else fine. Rowleg, I have not played around with too much. It seems okay. But I don't know why you'd play this over just playing straight Zacian or like Senti, honestly. Decidueye Obstagoon seems really good in a meta where you can just cheese your way through. So it's definitely one of my picks. I need to play a lot of games with it. I don't really understand the deck super well, honestly. But a deck with a Rosa engine can't be bad. And you already know off the deck list if your opponent is teched for you or not, so you can kind of coast. Aurora Welder Box, I'm not touching that. No. Crobat, no, I'm not touching it. Colossal, you have 2 auto wins in Eternatus and Pika. I don't even think Eternatus is an auto win, to be fair, but they're both really good matchups. I think your ADP matchup is pretty bad. I think Straight Zacian's pretty bad, so if you can ignore those aspects and try to ride that, I don't know your Senti Scorch matchup. You can try to go deep. Dragapult, Lycanroc seems like an okay deck, not just Dragapult by itself. Dragapult, Lycanroc, and kind of cheese the E-turns seems okay to do. But I wouldn't put stock into a deck that just loses to Dark. Mad Party, interesting deck. It's one that's on my radar just because your high roll is really good. You have the potential to just dig super deep and kind of go crazy, especially in a best of 3. And it's one of those decks that is prone to bricking once in a while. So if you can kind of eliminate that brick one of the 3 games, or like just take the brick one of the 3 games, you have a chance of going pretty deep. There's also Xander's Control, which I don't really like. Xander is really high on, not Sander, but Xander Perot is very high on Spiritomb Donphan, but that also means you have to play answers to ADP. Any Altaria base deck also is like really good if you don't expect a counter to it. So yeah. So my take is that I'm probably going to play Eternatus or Mad Party, given how the state of things are going. I'm going to give every deck a fighting chance test this week. I might stream, I might not stream. I've been playing a lot off stream. I think I played almost 30 games yesterday by itself, in like a few hours while I was watching anime. Um, Albeit most of them were with straight Zacian, but so I didn't have to think as much. But I am playing Pokemon again. I am practicing again. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I would really appreciate how your thought process is going. Hopefully this has helped you at least sit down and prepare or figure out how to approach this metagame. I know it's very stale. You probably have a pet deck you like. Stick with your pet deck if you have one. But for the time being, that's what I have to offer. Deck lists are all very available on Playtest Limitless. I know my opinion, some of you hold it very highly. Um, but for Eternatus, I'd probably play a much more heavy plant build rather than the stage 1 build or anything like that. I think plants are really good. I think just playing basics is really, really good. And I don't think playing Crushing Hammers is good. That's my opinion on that. For Mad Party, I want to find a way to make as many great catchers as I can fit into the deck to try to beat ADP. But I think Eternatus is a 50-50, and I think Scorch is favored. So I firmly believe Mad Party is a deck that has a good place in the meta, and then Straight Zacian is a deck that I'm probably going to be putting the most time into because I really like how it functions and the aggression that it offers. So from me, that's everything. Let me know what you guys want to see deck list wise in the comments below. I'll probably record something off of stream if I do stream. Maybe Straight Zacian games. I already did Zacian, so maybe Mad Party. I don't know. And then when we get to battle styles, we'll be doing fun new decks at that point, so we can check that out there. Okay. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Any likes, any comments, really do appreciate. Really does make my day. And if you guys don't mind subscribing, that'd be awesome. My content is staggered, but I can promise you have good content when it comes out. So thank you guys so much.